California Adventure is having a special ticketed food event this spring, and Bob Chapek shares some interesting thoughts about the future of social distancing and masks in the park, plus his thoughts on the annual pass holder program and the changes coming to Disneyland with that. And we're going to talk about all of that in today's video. Hey there, my name's Eric D, and on this channel my hope is always to make your next Disney adventure a little bit more magical with tips and tricks, food reviews, and news. So if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. But this past week, as we discussed in some of the previous videos, was Disney California Adventure's 20th anniversary. And on that anniversary, Disneyland Resort President Ken Potrock announced to cast members that there will be an all-new, limited-time, ticketed experience focused on our world-famous food and beverage offerings from around the resort, the latest merchandise, and unique, carefully crafted entertainment experiences. Ken's statement went on to say, "While this is clearly not all we want to accomplish, it's a start. Teams are working as we speak to start recalling identified cast in the coming weeks. This past year has presented extraordinary challenges, but that has not curtailed in any way our ability to move forward with a spirit of optimism." So of course this is not a full reopening of the parks, there's no way they can do that at this point, but it is a step in the right direction, and it's very exciting for those cast members that will be called back to work. So that is very good news for those cast members, and I'm sure it's going to be a great event. So I'm very excited that they're having this food event starting in March. We'll get more details about that. It's sounding like it will be in California Adventure only at this point, but I'm excited to hear more details about it, the prices, all of that. As they release information, I'll be sure to keep you up to date on that. So that is the latest there, a great announcement for Disney California Adventure's 20th anniversary. Now let's talk about some of the other Disneyland news we learned from this past week's investor call. Bob Chapek confirmed that Avengers Campus is still scheduled to open this year. So even though they don't have a park reopening date, it doesn't seem like they're backing down from planning to open it this year. He also said that Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is still on track to open in 2023 at Disneyland Resort. During these investor calls, one of the most interesting parts for me is not necessarily the prepared statement at the start, but more so the question and answer period, because questions are asked live and then they have to be responded to in real time. And I think sometimes people can give a little bit more than they mean to at times just because they're answering on their feet right at that moment. And Bob Iger was really polished with this. He usually presented himself very well. Bob Chapek sometimes is not quite as polished, I'll say it that way. So this past week there were a few answers where I'm like, whoa, I'm not sure if Bob Chapek meant to say all that. And so let's talk about a few of those answers that he gave where he maybe gave us a little bit more detail than maybe he was planning to, and maybe we can read into that a little bit more, what it means for Disneyland in the coming months. For example, when asked about how the profit margins will look at the parks when things got back to normal, he gave some background information about the now discontinued annual pass program.
I would characterize this last year as being not only a year of challenge, but also a year of learning in terms of what we can do in terms of sustained margin growth in our parks. I say that because, there's nothing like a pandemic to challenge the status quo and make you be fairly introspective about a lot of things, that you've maybe taken as fairly dogmatic. I think you've all seen several new announcements about things that we've done recently that may have been heresy prior to the pandemic, like recasting of our annual pass program at Disneyland and reconsidering, the overwhelming demand we have relative to supply. Everything we do, the first lens we look at is to exceed guest expectations, and it's very tough when your park has more demand than supply. We have to put limits on it. Well, as you know, we have a wide variety of margins depending on the nature of the guest and how they visit and when they visit. So with a lens towards maximizing the guest experience, we are now able to essentially reset many pieces of our business, both on the cost and revenue side of the business, in order to say, if we had a blank piece of paper, how would we set up our parks business and be, a little bit more aggressive than we typically might be able to be without the impetus of, unfortunately, a year-long closure. So we've had a lot of time to think, particularly at Disneyland, about what could be, and I think you're about to see some of those strategies be born.
As he said in that clip, not too long ago, what they're doing with the annual pass program would have been considered heresy. And he was really forthcoming with some of those things there, how they are kind of starting with a blank sheet of paper, and it confirms some of the things we have talked about in previous videos, but some of the specifics I wanted to call out, where he talked about the overwhelming demand they have for the parks, specifically Disneyland. They talked about still exceeding guest expectations, but putting limits on it for those guests, and talking about that they need to put in something to help handle how guests visit and when guests visit. So I think this is confirming what we've talked about before as far as the reservation system. He also goes on to talk about being a bit more aggressive when it comes to cost and revenue in this area. And so I think this is just confirming what those surveys we've seen from Disneyland talking about. At this price point, you can reserve, 90 days out. At this price point, you can reserve 60 days out. You can reserve 6 days. You can reserve 4 days. You can reserve 2 days. I think that is what he's talking about, being a bit more aggressive and handling those things a bit more. But I would love to know what you think in the comments below when he says being a bit more aggressive with the cost and revenue when it comes to annual pass holders. Let me know what your thinking is on that in the comments below, because he definitely was a little bit more forthcoming with that, but I think it is confirming all those things we've seen in the surveys, and just that I think it will be much more of a structured program, but also a lot of options and choices as far as what the individual guest needs, whether it's, oh, I like merchandise more, so my pass focuses a little bit more on merchandise events, and my pass focuses more on, oh, I can go on these weekends, but I can't go on regular days, maybe stuff like that. So let me know in the comments below what you think some of the words he's talking about there. The next clip I wanted to share was in response to a question about 6 feet social distancing and mask wearing, and if they saw those things getting back to normal in the parks by 2022. Some Disney news sites have taken these statements in one direction or another, and so I want you to listen to the quotes yourself and see what you think of this.
Yeah, I won't specifically comment on whether we anticipate getting to 19 revenues by 2022, but I will tell you what our expectations are in terms of the state of the world by then. We have no doubt that when we reopen up in parks that were closed or increase the capacity, that we'll have some level of social distancing and mask wearing for the remainder of this year. That's our expectation. But I believe that Dr. Fauci said earlier today that he hopes that there's vaccines for everyone who wants them by April this year. If that happens, that is a game changer. And that could accelerate our expectations and give people the confidence that they need to come back to the parks. Will there be some overlap until we know that we've hit herd immunity? Sure there will. But do we also believe that we'll be in the same state of 6-foot social distancing and mask wearing in 22? Absolutely not.
So like I've said, I've heard different interpretations of this, but the way I take it is Disney is planning on masks and some level of social distancing to last through 2021, unless herd immunity is reaching a lot quicker than planned. But they are betting that by 2022, they won't need the masks or the social distancing anymore. And I think that largely falls in line with what a lot of industries are thinking and saying at this point. While they didn't say anything, of course, specific about Disneyland reopening, they did, of course, say that it would not reopen through this financial quarter, but we, of course, knew that wasn't going to happen. But with the spring food festival coming our way, I am still hopeful for an early summer, very late spring opening, if possible, based on the falling case numbers, the increasing vaccinations, and also the way things are going with the governor right now. I think it's just a perfect storm for an early summer opening. That is my guess, but once again, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But that is the latest from Disneyland. A lot of good news, I think. A lot of good things are coming our way. But like I said before, I would like to hear in the comments below what your thoughts are on Bob Chapek's comments about the annual pass holder program, because I think he was a bit more forthcoming than some of the previous comments we've heard. But thank you so much for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, please give a like, and we'll see y'all again real soon. Bye.